Hey guys, welcome back to the channel Custom Carving and Epoxy UK, the home of all things resin related. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe, and if you're an existing viewer, thanks for viewing and I hope you enjoy this video. So those of you that have been following the channel know that I've been on a bit of a journey when it comes to blooms. So from disasters to slightly better to hopefully, well, this is my best one yet, and I absolutely love the effect on that. But it got me thinking, and I see lots of blooms which are pretty similar in patterns, pretty similar in design. Now, my mum, who I lost quite a few years ago now, her favourite flower was an orchid, a bit like this. And it got me thinking, can I make one in resin? And this particular mould, it reminds me of those 3 petals at the back, if I ignore those. So I'm going to try and recreate an orchid. Now it's going to create a few challenges, I think, because these big petals here, which will essentially be going down first, I think the white's going to have to be quite thick for them to come all the way into that centre, and then to still have those 3 petals on the back, which are going to hopefully not cause it all to blob. So there's that side of things. There's also the centre, which is quite intricate, and with blooms we know from the outside in it moves really well, but in the centre it doesn't move a lot. So it's again how I get that sort of look in the centre, if you can see there, if I can, and then the biggest challenge I think is how to get that sort of speckled effect on the petals, because blooms, as we know, they come inwards, and if I just put drops of mica powder or something like that on there, it's going to drag those dots into lines. So I did have a think, and I thought, what about if after it's bloomed I go back in and try and use some alcohol ink to put those little dots in the bloom. Don't know if it's going to work. And it's one that's going to require a lot of patience, and as most of you know who've watched the channel, I don't have a lot of that, but I wanted to give it a try. I thought it was something new. I've not seen an orchid video in resin, apart from the actual flowers in resin yet, so I thought it'd be something different as well. And apologies if there is already a video out there, I haven't seen it, but I just wanted to see if I could recreate an orchid in this mould, and rather than going with the traditional bloom, which is the shape of the mould, if I could get an orchid in there, I think it would look amazing. And as I say, it's just an experiment, bit of fun, so hopefully we will get the results we want. But as we know in resin, nothing is guaranteed, and it's going to be a case of if these crazy ideas work or not. So I'm just going to put this over here so it doesn't get any resin on my phone, but I've still got it there as a bit of a guide, that picture, to give me an idea. And it's not going to be identical, I know that, but I just want to see if I can get something that at least resembles an orchid in a bloom. So we're going to see if it works. All I've done so far, mixed up 4 ounces of resin. I'm using the Let's Resin 1:1. Now normally I go when the base is at about 35, but it gets very close to blobbing, I found, at that temperature. So I'm going to wait until the base is around about 37, just those extra 2 degrees. I think it will make the resin a little bit thicker and be able to withstand a bit more bloom, hopefully, when I mix it with this ocean white pigment. For the centre, I'm going to try a combination of different micas. So I've got this cherry, I've got my favourite colour, which is papaya, and I've got a tiny bit of this gold left that's mixed with papaya. So I'm going to try and mix those to create that sort of centre shape. Put the centre in first, hopefully so it at least resembles an orchid centre. Then put the 2 main petals in. Then put the 3 outer petals in. And as I say, it's the first time I'm doing this. I don't know if it's going to work. Let me know in comments if you think it will or not. And then once it's actually bloomed, the plan is, before the resin actually sets, is to use some alcohol ink and a toothpick, so it's going to be quite detailed, just to get those little dots of colour in on that bloom, because hopefully if I can time it right, I'm still going to be able to tint that bloom once it's actually bloomed. So we'll see if that works. So just going to check the temperature now. So on the surface that's 37.4, wow. And on the base we're at 35 already, so pretty much ready to go. I can't believe how quickly it's gone up today actually compared to yesterday. But as I say, yesterday's bloom I think has been my best bloom so far, so if you've not seen that video, go back and watch it. And I think the cases with this one will be to not overcomplicate things, not try and put extra petals in, not try and put extra details in, just to keep it simple hopefully, and see if I can get something that resembles it. So we're pretty much at temperature now. I want it to be a little bit thicker as well, just in case I go too heavy with this white. So I'm just going to check the temperature one more time. 37.7 on top, and on the base 34.4. So I'm going to wait one more minute I think, then mix up the white, get it ready in my piping bag, and then get started by pouring it and try and come up with that center. As I say, I don't know exactly how I'm going to do it, but it's going to be a fun experiment, and just to see if I can get those designing. Got a few toothpicks ready. I've got a little popsicle stick, one of the thinner ones as well, just to try and get that center design in. And the way I'm looking at it is I think it's going to have to almost sort of flow and come in like that, and then a little one like that on the base. So again, I don't know if any of this is going to work, and that bloom could come in and completely get rid of that center. So might be better doing this in layers, but I'm not going to for the purpose of this experiment. I want to see if I can do it in one go and create something that at least resembles an orchid. So I think we will be about there now temperature wise. 35.1. so this is where I went yesterday, but I want it to get just that little bit thicker, because again, even on yesterday's bloom, which worked out really well, there was a couple of dots that blobbed, and you can't really tell, but just there and there. So I want to make sure that I'm just giving it that extra little bit of time, hopefully to thicken this resin up, because it's not a very thick resin. If this doesn't work, what I am going to try is try it again, I think, with a thicker viscosity resin, to see if that works, because I think the biggest risk I've got here is blobbing, because I'm going to have to go in quite thick to create those two main petals and get enough white on there for them to bloom all the way in. So let's get on with it. So this has had probably it's had 10 minutes in the bubble removal machine to get it crystal clear like that. And I can feel it's getting warm already actually. And then it's had about another 10 minutes there, so about 20 minutes overall. But I think we're at the temperature now where if I leave it any longer, it's going to go up really quick. Look at that already, 39.5 on the top. 37.2, so I am going to go. So the first thing I'm going to do is just put a little bit in this pot for my white. Going with about 3/4 of a pot full. Again, I do all of this by eyeball. I don't measure it with scales or anything like that. And then I'm just going to put a tiny drop in here to create that center and try and get the color I want. Next, I'm going to pour it in. And as I said, I want it a little bit deeper than yesterday's, just to give it that extra protection, hopefully against blobbing. So not quite full, but almost. I want it about 3/4 of the way full, just leaving enough for a backing if I want one. And I think that is about there now. Now I am going to pour the rest of it in here, just so that I'm not wasting the resin, and I've got some spare if I need it. So that's that. And in fact, I'm going to get another little pot, because I think this is going to work best with two colours. So if I look at an orchid, there's almost like a little pattern there in this sort of brighter colour. So I'm just going to put a little bit of this gold and papaya mixed mica powder in here, like that, not a lot. And then I'm going to put the remaining drop of my resin in there, he says. But you can see it's already thickening up, it's trying not to come out, which is actually what I wanted, but I'm hoping it's still going to bloom. And the rule is, obviously, whenever you're mixing mica and resin, you don't want more than 10% of your mica or pigment or whatever you're adding versus the resin. So I think that's enough in there. So I'm just going to mix this up So I've got that gold, almost papaya tinge, and I'm not happy with that colour. I think it's too gold for what I want, and I want the gold to come through, but I also want the papaya. So I'm just going to mix up my white first and get that in the bag so it's done. Just using the Let's Resin Ocean White. I think 1.5 drops should be enough. When it wants to come out, that's 1 and a string and a half, and I think that should be perfect, hopefully, based on what I've been doing. So I'm going to mix that up, get it in my piping bag, and then concentrate on hopefully getting this bloom right. And when you're mixing your white, you want it reasonably opaque, but you still want to be able to see your stick underneath it, otherwise it's too opaque and it won't bloom. So there we go. I can still, if you see the edge, I can still see through that, so it's transparent enough that the bloom should still work, but opaque enough that hopefully it's going to give me good coverage. So just going to pour that in my piping bag before we continue, because I want my piping bag and my bloom resin to be roughly at the same temperature. Otherwise, I think that's what's caused me problems in the past. They've not been at the same temperature. And I'm trying not to ruin my new silicone mat as well at the same time, so keep the workspace looking a little bit clean. But in the piping bag, squeeze it all down to the bottom, give it a twist, and that is ready to go. That's ready to pipe, and it is feeling warm, so good start. Now with this, I want to make sure that any bubbles that are in there are out. So I can see one there, and I like to go around the edge of this mold just because that's where any of the bubbles, if they are in there, like to sit, especially in the points. So I'm going to get those out, get them somewhere near the top, somewhere near the middle, so I can get them with the torch. And it does feel, the resin feels a little bit thicker than yesterday because I've left it that extra bit longer, which is what I wanted. So just going to give it a quick torch now, he says. I think I might need to refill this soon. So getting rid of all of those surface bubbles, and if there's any left, I am still going to pick them out because I don't want bubbles, just in case this works. I don't want them too close to the side of the mold, because the risk is if you torch near the side of the mold, you could actually bond the resin to it, which is not what you want. So I think that's got most of them that I can see. Oh, there's a little one. But I do need to start really getting a move on if I'm going to get this design in time for it to bloom. So happy with that. I think that's most of the bubbles gone. Now for the centre. As I say, I've got that gold. I'm not happy with the colour, so I'm just going to grab some more of this papaya and add a little bit of that in here. Again, I don't want to add too much, because if you add too much mica to anything, it's just going to sink. But I do want it to have more of an orangey gold colour. So just a tiny bit of that papaya. So that I'm happier with the colour, hopefully. So just mixing that up. And as you can see, it's getting thick already, so I've really got to get a move on. And I don't mind if this isn't that thoroughly mixed, sorry, because I actually don't mind the two different tones coming through. There we go. So looking at this centre of this orchid, I just want sort of a little tiny speck of this, and I'm going to use my toothpick first to create a dot there, and I'm just going to let it run off my toothpick. Hopefully it's not going to be too heavy. Somewhere near the centre. One dot like that. And then I want a little tiny, almost wispy little dot here. So I'm going to put a dot on this side. I'm trying my best not to get any stringy effects. As part of the challenge. I'm trying to keep them reasonably equal. So again, I want a dot on this side. Come on. There we go, just let it fall off the toothpick. And then what I'm going to do with these 2 dots is just bring them inwards a little bit like that. And don't forget, the center probably won't move a lot. So that's like that. Now I'm going to mix up into this. I'm going to mix up some of this gold papaya. Again, not too much now because I want the pink tones to come through. So just a little sprinkling on the top. I'm going to get some of this cherry, which is almost a metallic red pinky colour, and mix that in. And as I say, I haven't got a clue if this is going to work or not, but it's always fun to have a little experiment. I'm going to use the mixing stick from the bloom because actually if it does bloom a little bit, I'll be quite happy about that, because for this bit I think I'm going to need it to. And just going to get a bit of this cherry. So I don't need a lot because I'm not actually going to need a lot. I think that'll be enough. And then mixing it together. And so far I've not spilt any in the piece, which is great. See that colour? It's almost a pinky gold now. And what I'm going to try and do, as I say, this is all an experiment at the minute. There we go, that's mixed nicely. Is again just using the toothpick. I'm going to try and get a little blobby line, what I can just pull down there. And it's not going to take a lot, just a little bit. And don't forget, it's moving the rest of the resin when I do this. So, and then either side I want a little bit more, and I'm going to try and pull it in so it kind of blends with that gold. Like that. And then at the base I want another one, possibly a little bit thicker, just to literally, oops, there we go. I want this to sort of come up and I suppose complete it. And I'm hoping that by using the mica I'm going to get a little pattern with these, with the texture. It's not guaranteed, but again I don't want it to blob either. So that is pretty much going to be my center. I'm just trying to make sure it's all equal. And it's not going to be perfect, I know that. I just want it to at least resemble. Now the next thing I'm going to do is try and pipe the big leaves. So literally I want to get quite a bit of resin out, because if you don't put enough resin on, it ain't going to have a chance to spread. And that's the concern here, is I need to put quite a bit on, I think, in order for it to spread all the way, because there's not going to be many petals on this. So I'm just going to take off a little bit more than I normally do and hopefully get it flowing. And then I'm going to go in just around like that and go back around. So say it's going to need enough to come all the way through, and hope, as I say, and again with this one I want to make sure that there is enough for it to come all the way in. And it's not perfect piping, I know, but now what I'm going to do is just use this stick to sort of move it all around and together. And I'm being really careful here because I don't want to push it in and encourage any sinking, but I want to make sure it's all joined because I want it to look like one petal. Might move this out a little bit actually, like that. And hopefully by doing that, it's joining the white together and it gives it more chance of blooming. Again, it's my first time doing it, so I don't know if it'll work or not. But I'm just moving it around. I'm just hoping it's not too heavy from a resin. I want it to stay sort of in that pattern without blobbing. Let me know in comments, do you think it's going to work? Or do you think I've gone too heavy and I'm just going to get a blobby mess? That is the question. We should know in about 5 minutes. So that's the main petals. Now I need to do the ones there and there. So again, I've got to be careful here. There we go. And that one there. And then down here, I need another one just coming out, potentially going into there, and the same in this one here. And now that's done, again, I'm just going to play around with it to get them looking like I want. And I hope that there is enough for them to spread, and actually with these thinner petals I'm not sure there will be, so I might add a little bit more. And it's all about finding the right balance, I think. So again, I'm just gonna try and add a little bit more because I want them to look reasonably equal. Just gonna go along there as well for a bit of a thinner one and try and get just enough to make sure it's going to bloom. And as I say, I don't know at this point if I've gone too thick, too thin, or what will happen, but that's roughly the shape of my orchid. Now I've just got to pray that that bloom comes in for it to be able to work. But as I say, guys, let me know in comments, do you think it's going to work, or do you think I'm going to have a blobby mess? And at the minute, it doesn't look like it's blooming. So I'm just going to heat it as well. Just with my torch, try and encourage any blooming to happen, but I'm not feeling confident at this point. The blooming hasn't started. So it could be a case of a great idea, poorly executed. We will find out in a minute. But literally, I need all of it to close into that center now. And it doesn't look like it is, but we will see. Now I've got an awful lot of spare now, so I'm just going to pour some into different molds at the side, hopefully giving that chance to bloom. And hopefully avoiding any spillages. I think I'm going to have enough for maybe 2 or 3 of these. So just put a little bit of gold in there. Still not blooming. This is the moment of truth, I suppose. Waiting to see if it's going to bloom or not. And if it doesn't, I will have a failed experiment. But you don't know unless you try in resin. And that's part of the fun, I think. It's just trying new things and seeing what effects you get. And if it works, you know, if it works, I think it'll look really cool. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. So just getting the rest of this out. And at least, if nothing else, I'll have some nice teddy bear molds. It looks like it's attempting to bloom now. Starting to pull inwards a little bit. There we go. So I'm going to see how far we get. Loving this colour though. And as I say, I need this first stage to work with the blooming in order to experiment with the second stage. It looks like it's trying to. I just need to keep my eye on it as well, so that when it does, if it does bloom, I can time it right to hopefully use this alcohol ink and put those patterns in, which I think will probably, based on yesterday's results, be in about 10 or 15 minutes. So it's going to be quite a wait, especially for me, and I'm not going to make you guys wait all of that time. I just want to see if it's working first, and it does look like it's trying to. So we may have a success yet. And I say, if not this time, then I am going to try it with a thicker resin, because I think it's got to be doable. There's nothing that says to me that it's not doable, and it's just a case of me figuring out how to do it. Or it's impossible, and that's why nobody else has tried it yet. So I've got the rest of this white. I'm just going to use that now to fill up these molds, hopefully. And be careful when you squeeze it, because it does try and come out the other end, a bit like toothpaste. So just going to put this in here, and I hope I've got enough to fill these three. I might not. In fact, I'm going to be a little bit short, I think. Only a tiny bit though. And I might try and scrape the remainder out of these pots here rather than mixing any more up, because I think it's not far off. But again, let me know in comments, guys, do you think this is going to work or not? And are you liking the content? That's what I want to know. Are you liking the content I'm doing? Are you fed up of blooms? Are you fed up of flowers? Are you fed up of pendants? What do you want me to see do next? This is your channel as well as mine, so let me know. Happy to oblige with any experiments I can. So they are so close now. I'm just going to see if I can scrape this last bit out and mix it around like that, and see if we get that teddy bear filled. I think he's not far off. And then this one here as well. There we go, just mixing it around a little. And what I am going to do is try and swirl this as well, which I didn't do on the last one. And just see if that creates sort of any different effect. Right, I think that's all I can get out of that pot. Still trying to bloom, so you never know. I've got a feeling I'm very close to blobbing though at the minute. Just here, we're ended. I'm just going to try and tease it up and hopefully prevent it from blobbing. But we will find out in a minute. It's always where you start and where you end as well. So, got a tiny bit of this gold left. I might as well get every drop out that I can. So to fill these, and hopefully I'll make some cool key rings or be part of a larger project. Again, it is trying, but I'm not sure it's going to be thick enough, but we'll see. I'm not doing anything else with it now apart from just waiting and seeing if I can get it to bloom. And if it doesn't pull all the way in, then that will be the end of the experiment, I'm afraid. Because it has to for it to work. Right, so that is all of my resin in those. I'm going to use my toothpick, being careful obviously not to touch the bottom of the mould, and just swirl these around a little bit to create a slightly different effect. There we go, happy with those. And as you can see, it is trying, but I just don't know if there is enough bloom for it to go all the way to the center. Even if it's faint, that will work. But I still need it to go in more. And I'm just wondering here if there's enough for it to be able to do that. Just going to give it another blast with the torch just to help encourage it along. And you're trying to go around and push it to that center when you do this. So I'm gonna wait another 5 or 6 minutes, see what happens with this. If it carries on going in, we've got a good chance, and I'll come back. And either way, I'll come back and let you guys know what's happening with the experiment anyway. I don't think any of it's blobbed yet. I always try and sort of look through the resin and see. So if it goes all the way in, we could have a cool result. Then all I'm gonna do is use this peach red alcohol ink, put some in here, and a toothpick, and try and dot it round to create that pattern, if it all blooms in. And I think we'll get some really faint ones in the center, but that's fine. And some sort of a thicker white towards the edge where I've piped it. So again, let me know in comments, do you think this is gonna work or not? And I'll see you in about 5 or 10 minutes. So it's been about 5 minutes and it is still trying to come in, but I'm just going to encourage it again with the torch because I want it to completely close in. And again, by encouraging it and hopefully slightly heating that resin up, it's gonna hopefully completely close, because I need it to close for the experiment to have worked. And I'm hoping that that center bit doesn't. I'm hoping that stays, and I'm hoping that the white just comes into there and stops. But there are so many variables, I don't know. So again, I'm just doing this to try and keep the resin warm, try and keep it moving, and try and encourage that bloom just to still spread a little. Because I want it to be completely closed, but so far it's looking promising, and I'm just hoping over the next 5 minutes or so it completely closes. Then I can get on with the next part of the experiment again, which could or could not work. I don't know yet until I've tried it, so I'll see you in 5. Right, we're back and it's been about 10 or 15 minutes and I'm not convinced that it will close any more than this, but it's pretty close, you know. It's gone into the center. Some of those white bits have anyway. There's just a couple of little patches, so I might have to fix that when I back it if I go down that route. So I'm going to try the next part of the experiment now, but I'm going to try from the outside in, and hopefully the alcohol ink might still push that bloom that little bit further in so it completely covers it. So the plan is here, and again, it's the first time I've done this, is whilst the bloom is still moving, to try and get little dots of this alcohol ink in the bloom to try and create that effect. I don't know if it's going to work, or if as soon as the alcohol ink touches the surface, if it's just going to go off and cover the back, but we'll see. And looking at the orchid, they seem to be smaller dots on the outside of the petals, and then they get a little bit more pronounced as they come in. So I'm going to try and replicate that. I'm going to be using the Let's Resin Peach Red because it's a really bright pinky colour, and I'm not going to try and just dot it in, because if I do that I know it will just spread. So I'm going to pour some into this pot at the side, a few drops, not too much. I think that should give me enough to work with. And then I'm just going to use a toothpick, and I'm going to start at the outer edges and come in. But again, I might change my mind when I do the first dot, who knows. This is all an experiment, and I'm just going to dip that in and try and dip it into that bloom. And see if that comes through the other side. And again, I'm being careful because I don't want it to go all the way through and cause it to blob. As you can see, it's going to be a time-consuming process, but I just want to see if this is going to work. And it's just about having fun for me, you know, experimenting. Haven't seen one of this, well, I haven't seen this done before, so I wanted to try and see A, if it can be done, and B, what it looks like. Just got to be careful not to actually, let's say, push down or anything like that, because that might encourage blobbing, which I don't want. And again, let me know in comments, do you think this is going to work or not? I'm hoping to at least get a different shade come through the other side. And again, just starting at those outer edges, and then I'm going to work my way in. But that's why the timing was crucial, because if this had set, there would be no way of doing this. And again, it's time consuming, but you know what, it's pretty relaxing. So if you need to de-stress, try this. And again, I am expecting the ink to still want to spread a little bit, so maybe that will complete the pushing. So I hope we don't get any blobbing with this. I think there's a couple of areas at risk, and especially with me doing this afterwards. I've never ever attempted this before, but I think it will look cool if it works. Big if. I'm just trying to go around the edges of the petals. I can see in the center it's already just trying to start to cure now. So I am trying to speed up a little bit. But there's only so fast you can go when you're doing something like this. And even if it just tints at the other side, I think it will give it a really cool effect. And obviously with your alcohol ink, what you've got to remember is as you do it, the alcohol is evaporating all of the time as well. So that's another reason to try and be as quickly as you can. And I can feel it is completely evaporating now. I'm just going to put a couple more drops in. And I can feel it's starting to cure up as well, the resin. So maybe I left it a little bit too long. I don't know. I'm just trying to think, is there a way to speed this up? Let's try two at a time. So it's like chopsticks now. But I can feel in certain areas the resin trying to cure, so I'm just trying to speed it up a little, especially near that center. I may have gone over it a little bit too much with the torch actually, which has encouraged it to cure. As I say, just hoping. Yeah, that center really is curing. Look at that. I was dinting it, so I'm going to start the center actually. Come out. Because the edges aren't curing as fast. Again, trying to keep that intricate design though. I'm trying to get in, even though I know I've got a time scale to do it in now. Look at that move. I'm trying to keep the smaller dots in the center if possible, and then move it out. In fact, I think I'm faster with just one, so here we go. Time is not my friend today. And what I might do is back this, but do the center white, just so it covers up any of these transparencies, and then a different color around the edges. But look at it, it's curing in places and not in others, so really trying to get a move on now to keep that pattern alive, and hopefully this won't cause the whole thing to blob. I'm going to speed this up for you guys as well, otherwise you'll be here for a long time. But I think you get the idea. What I might do is actually go to a silicone stick in a minute, just to create some different sort of size dots as well. And as I say, I'm just hoping that this isn't a complete waste of time, and all you see on the other side is the white bloom. But I think it's just an example of use your imagination when you work with resin and see what is possible. Even if this doesn't work out, I think from the back it looks like an orchid. Okay, so that's quite a lot of dots in with this toothpick, but you can see it is really trying to set up now. So I'm just going to move on to this silicone tool and see if I can get a few different kind of dots. I'm just trying to keep the design reasonably symmetrical as well, which is not the easiest. As you can see, the ink has pretty much run out now. So whatever's left on this dabber, I think it's about all I'm going to get. But I'm pretty happy with that as a design. Now we'll see how it cures, and if I get any blobbing on the other side or not, and if, obviously, we'll be able to see that pink through it. If not, it's just been a complete waste of time. So we will see. But hopefully, we're going to get an orchid. Because it's bloomed, I'm going to put a back on it in a few hours. And the plan is, I think, I'm going to go around the edge with the dark, and then in the center I'm going to go with the same ocean white that I've used for the bloom. Hopefully that'll fill in these transparent areas and give us more of an effect. Don't know if it's going to work, but we'll find out. So it's been about 3 hours now, and I'm just thinking about, well, 4 hours, sorry. And I'm just thinking about backing this because it looks like it's bloomed. Loving the effect on this side. I don't know what it will look like from the front, but I can see this sort of, those little transparent bits in the middle, which I don't want as an orchid because I don't think that'll look right. So I am going to put a backing on this, and what I'm thinking of doing is going in there with that white, with the bloom, and then going around the edges with this dark gold, because I think that'll look really good as sort of a shimmery effect. And see what happens. So I'm just going to mix up some resin, then we'll mix up the colours, pour that on, and then ready for demold tomorrow. So there we go, got about 40 ml in there of resin. Just going to mix it up for a few minutes. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add the colours first, then put it in the debubbling machine once I've split it. And I think I'm going to want more white than I'm going to want gold, because I just want the gold to fill in around those edges. And actually, if I pour it around the edges and then pour the white in the middle, hopefully it's going to create some sort of effect as well. So it'd be interesting to see that. And if you're new to resin, what you're wanting is to get rid of those streaks in there. So you want to keep mixing it until it is completely clear. Hopefully with this only being a small amount, should only take a couple of minutes with this Let's Resin 1:1 resin. And I'm really hoping that some of that pink effect comes out on the front, otherwise it's just been a waste, and then we'll have to go on to the next experiment because I'm determined to get an orchid somehow. And I've just noticed somehow I've just dropped something on there, which I don't want. Because that could impact the piece, and I don't even know what it is actually. I think it's a little bit of dried resin. There we go, so that's off. I don't know where that came from or even what it was, but there we go. And as you can see, I can touch that and it's pretty semi-cured, I would say, so almost there. But there we go, that's pretty much streak free now after a couple of minutes. So what I'm going to do is, because I want the two different colours, is just separate it in half and half probably into another pot, and that can be my gold. And there's loads of bubbles in it at the minute, but I'm not fussed about that because at the end of the day it's going to go in the debubbling machine anyway. So got the two different colours. As I say, I want to keep one of them as white, so whichever one's got the most in. I think they're about equal actually. I think I've done them half and half. So I'm going to add just, again, a drop of the ocean white because that's what I actually use for the bloom into this one. Probably just about a drop and a half, I think. 1, 2. It doesn't like to drop, this ocean white from Let's Resin. It prefers to give a stringy effect. And then for the gold, I've got this metallic gold powder, and I'm just gonna add a little bit of that into here. Again, you don't need a lot with these metallics, so just a sprinkle like that, and I think that should be enough. And hopefully it will give us a really nice edge colour. And that's another reason why I'm using these silicone pots. I find them easier to pour from. But that is quite a deep, rich gold colour now. Look at that, absolutely stunning. So the plan is to go around the edges with this gold so that there is a darker edge. So that is that one. And then this one is going to be my white, which is going to go in the centre. And again, just mixing it through, and hopefully that will give me the centre bits. It should cover the transparent bits, so it looks like it's one bloom, hopefully. And then the outer bits can be this gold. So again, just going to put these in the debubbler for a couple of minutes to get rid of any bubbles that might be in there. If you've not got one as well, I use the Airless Pro from Resiners, and I found it to be brilliant as a machine. The thing I like about it is you can use it with thin and thick and medium viscosity resins, and it completely gets rid of any of those annoying air bubbles that you might have. And it's dead straightforward to use. And if you haven't got one and want one, there is a discount code that I've got in the description. Just put it in on the Resiners website, which is resiners.com, ccukresin, and it will get you 15% off. So I'm going to come back once it's debubbled. So that's my two colours ready. Just gone through the debubbling machine, and I can't see any bubbles in there, so that's always good. Just going to give it a slow stir as well, but look at that colour. Absolutely stunning. So I'm going to go around the edges first with this deep gold and hope that it's set enough. And again, just making sure that you're in picture, which you are. And I just want enough to literally cover these edges. And then the rest I'm hoping to fill with white. But if I get a couple of blobs, again, it won't matter that much. I just want to make sure there's enough gold to cover these edges like that. And then I'm going to start here because I don't want that gold in the centre, and just pour all of that white in. And I think that will do me for a back, hopefully. And you never know, it might even give us a cool effect on the back, just because I've used that white bloom. But I would say that's pretty much full. And what I'm going to do is just use the stick that I used to mix it, just to make sure it goes all the way up to those edges as well. But I think it pretty much has. And that's the effect I wanted, mainly white in the middle. And then white in the center. So we're going to see how that does. I've got a little bit of gold left, so I'm going to make a metallic gold bear as well. Why not? Whilst I've got the mold out. Might even get two, I don't know, but probably just the one, I think. Again, it'd be cool to see what this actually comes out like. There we go, and I think I might get two. And for those of you that watch the channel regularly, you'll know I hate wasting resin. So I'll always try and get much as possible out. And don't forget, if I just left this cup now, there'd be loads of resin still in there. So always scrape your silicone pots clean, basically, because there's lots of resin that normally just stays in there and then you take it out at the end. So I might be a little bit short. Don't know, we'll find out in a second. but I know I've got some of that white left in the pot as well, so I can try and top it up with that. So that is pretty much all of the gold gone, but I have still got a tiny bit of this bloom in the white, so I'm going to add that to this mould. Expands it a bit, and you never know, it might give a cool effect as well. But mainly for me, it's just about using up every drop of your resin so none of it goes to waste. There we go, and just giving it a bit of a mix around with the stick. That one is definitely full now. I'm just trying to scrape the last drop out to add to this one. There we go. And that is pretty much full. So we've used all of that resin. I don't mind that this one is a little bit domed, because I actually prefer that, because then you don't get that lip, which sometimes you get if you don't fully dome them. So there we go. So that is those done. And the great thing with these silicone pots is when they're cured, you can just peel the resin off. So I'm just going to go and torch these now in case there are any air bubbles, he says. I think I'm running low on the gas, so may have to top this back up. There we go. So getting rid of any of those air bubbles that might be on the surface. Trying to stay away from the edges wherever possible. And then we will demold tomorrow and see if we've got an orchid or if we've got a blobby mess. Let me know in comments what you think, and I'll see you in the morning. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It is the next day and we are ready for demold. So I'm excited for this, just to see if this orchid effect has worked or not. You can see where the gold's pulled in there and left that white in the center, which is what I wanted on that backing. But let's demold a couple of these teddy bears first and see what they came out with, like with the spare resin. Again, love that. Just, it's almost like a marbling effect with those spare bits. And then this was with the backing. So expecting these to still be a little bit soft because it's only been, what, 15 hours or so. But that is just the gold. And again, really cool. Absolutely love them. So, again, do you think this orchid's worked? I really hope it has. If not, hopefully there'll be some learning curves in there so that I can do it again, because I'm determined to get an orchid in a bloom. It's gonna happen. And I'm just hoping, the main thing I want to see is that that alcohol ink technique I used with the bloom has worked, because if that's worked, I think the rest of it I can sort. So without further ado, here we go. But look at that back as well. I love that, just those striations where the gold's pulled into that white, and then you've got this little effect. So here we go, the moment of truth. Have we got an orchid, or something that resembles an orchid at least? Just going to loosen every one of these tips. He says. Here we go. So let's get this mold off and let's see, has it worked? Still a little bit soft on the back, so I just need to be a little bit careful. But the moment of truth, oh, so close. Right, the center for me didn't really work because it ended up shifting when the bloom came in. But I don't know what you think about these petals. Apart from this blobbing, I really like that effect. with the alcohol ink coming through. And for me, it does resemble an orchid. But what I'm going to do, I think, to prevent this blobbing, I'm going to try it again with a thicker resin. So I've got a ccukresin, which I think is a slightly thicker viscosity, and see if I can get this to work, because it is so close. Genuinely, again, this resembles an orchid to me now. I'm going to think about that center, and if there's something else I can do to try and make that work, and just prevent these blobbings. But apart from that, the finish itself I really like, and it does remind me of an orchid. So very close. You won't always get the effect you want on the first attempt. I do love the background though as well, with the gold coming through. I think it really makes the white pop. So I'm going to use that again. So I am going to try this experiment again. I'm going to do it straight away now in this video, so you're not watching 3 or 4 different videos while I try and get it right with the ccukresin. I'm going to fast forward through the whole process, but just to see that you can see that I'm doing it exactly the same way, but with that different ccukresin, which is a thicker viscosity, which I think will prevent this blobbing. And I'm going to try and time it slightly different, so these dots stay in a little bit better and a little bit clearer. And I think that's all it's going to be. It's about timing it right. But that, for a first attempt, I'm pretty happy with. It's close, and it does resemble an orchid. So we're going to try it again now. I'm going to fast forward through it. I'm going to do it at like 60 speed, so you haven't got to watch another 1 hour video, and see if we can get it right with the thicker viscosity resin. So here we go, guys, round 2 with the orchid. As you can see, we got so close with this one. It's just that blobbing that for me really ruined the piece. So I'm trying it with a different resin. That's the only difference here. So I've got some ccukresin off Temu, which is quite a cheap resin, but it's quite a thick viscosity. Put it through the bubble removal machine, and again, look, it gets rid of all of those bubbles, so I'm really happy with that. And then the only other thing I'm going to try with this one, as well as using the alcohol ink, is I've got some of this very fine pink and white glitter. I've never tried putting glitter in a bloom, so I'm actually going to try putting the tiniest bit of that. Literally, it was a tad in the white bloom as well, just to see what kind of impact that has as well. But apart from that, I'm going to fast forward through the whole process for you. I'm going to do it at probably 60 times speed, so you haven't got to watch another hour of this video, just to see if this works, and then I'll see you straight at demold. But remember, if you're liking the content, if you're liking the experiments, if you're liking the results we're trying to get, do me a favor, like and subscribe to the channel. It makes a massive difference, and it allows me to keep doing these sort of experiments. So I'm going to crack on with it now. The temperatures for this ccukresin at the minute is 34 on the bottom, and it's 37.4 on the top, so we're almost there. I want it to be at least 35 on the bottom, and I want it to be around about 38 on top. As long as it's there, the bloom should work. So, and it's all about temperatures. It's all about testing it with your resins. Every single resin out there will have a different perfect temperature for blooms, and part of the struggle of doing the blooms and getting them the way that you want is finding out the perfect temperature for your resin based on your environment and everything else. So I'm afraid you are going to have to experiment. This is round 2. I'm hoping I get it in this round, but I'm going to fast forward through the whole process so you can see that I'm still doing it. Exactly the same process as the first one, but just with this different resin, and let's see if we can get the perfect orchid. Morning, guys, and it's the next day and time for demold. Time to see if attempt number 2 has got a better effect than attempt number 1 with this orchid. I'm just hoping to avoid that blobbing. If I've avoided the blobbing, then we'll have a really good effect. So let's see. Going to start off with this starfish that I just put the spare bits in. And again, this is that crystal starfish, so I don't know what this will look like. But you never know until you experiment. So need to clean it up on the sides, I think. I overfilled it. Different. And you know what, even though there's that blobbing, putting the spare resin in, I really like the 3D effect that I get from that sort of metallic powder. And again, with that crystal look, I still like that. So that's the starfish. And again, I'm going to use my deburring tool just to go around the edges and get rid of any of those bits where I've overfilled. But it has given me an idea as well, because I love the way the silver's looking on the base and I love the crystal effect. So maybe do a few of these with the different metallic bases and see what they come out like. I say it's a really good mold. I'm loving that. So that's that one. And now the snail. Let's hope the antennas have worked on this one. It's very hit or miss. I spent a bit more time on it this time, so hopefully, as I say, hopefully those antennae will have stayed intact. So best way to do this is just to try and demold as much as you can. Work your way around the mold and then try and just bend it over itself like that. And then being careful around the head, as I say, because the last thing I want to do is snap those antennas off. Oh, and we've got complete antennas. Look at that. Love that. And I do quite like these snails, the way they turn out, and that was just by using spare resin. And lovely shine on it. And that's the key. If you spend the time on it, you get the antennas in and they don't snap. So really happy with him. Did get an air bubble though. Noticed that there and there, which I didn't get on the last one. So there we go. But again, really like him. And now for the main event. Orchid attempt number 2. Love the silver, the way that's looking on the back. And that's that silver metallic powder. Now I know this is going to be a slightly different look to this one. It should be darker in the center because I did put that drop of alcohol ink in the center as well. So we will find out. Again, just going around the mold, each one of these points. And then it should demold pretty easily, hopefully. There we go. So, has it worked? Have we avoided the blobbing that we got in attempt number 1 by using that slightly thicker resin? Or not? Or have we got a blobby mess? Wow. Yeah, I'm really not sure about that one. Very different effect. And it hasn't really blobbed. It's just slightly wispier around those lines. And again, those stamens, they do move with the resin. Love that effect in the middle from the alcohol ink. And again, the dots aren't as prevalent all the way, but you can see them in places. So let me know what you think in comments, guys. Actually, the silver I think was a little bit light for the backing. And I prefer the gold. I think it makes it stand out more if you look at the two side by side. And actually I think the first attempt resembles an orchid more than the second attempt. So I am probably going to give this another go, but not straight away. The good thing is, as I say, we avoided the heavy blobbing that we got on the first one on this one, but it came to more of a wispy effect. And I think it was because the resin was a thicker viscosity, didn't really move that bloom as much, and that's the problem that I had. But I still like it. I still think it's a pretty piece. Not completely what I wanted, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this orchid project on hold for a couple of weeks. I've got an idea, and I've got something on its way in the post, which may help prevent blobbing in blooms. So I'm going to experiment with it and I'm going to do another video on it. But do you know what? I'm happy with the look. They both still look really pretty. They resemble an orchid, which is what I was trying to do, rather than a traditional 3D bloom. And I love the colour scheme on them. So I'm reasonably happy with those. If you've liked the content, do me a favour, like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you on the next video.